happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, and I'm very sorry that we are taping on Wednesday afternoon, so we can't discuss the debate that is happening tonight, which you'll all be talking about for the next few days. But we have a treat for you to make up for that.
Our special guest, and you're going to want to stay tuned for the last 20 minutes of this show, is award-winning playwright Tarell Alvin McCraney, whose story is the basis for the groundbreaking new movie Moonlight, about growing up black and gay in America.
The movie opens this weekend. It is a stunner. I highly recommend it, and I highly recommend that you watch this interview. On the other hand,
we enjoyed it
very much. The surreal, depressing campaign in the United States continues, but don't underestimate the power of your vote.
Judy Shepard, the mother of Matthew Shepard, attacks Donald Trump for spreading hate and violence.
The legal challenge to the constitutionality of North Carolina's anti-LGBT law intensifies.
There was a setback for Louisiana's governor's efforts to protect LGBT rights.
Lambda Legal defense comes out in favor of decriminalizing consensual sex work.
An Indonesian gay couple was arrested for a picture on Facebook showing themselves being affectionate with each other.
It's not censored here. We'll show it to you. A new finding in AIDS research is called Stunning by Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health.
And I'm going to review 3 new productions in New York, and Ann's going to review one, including one that I liked very much, Mike Bartlett's Love, but we start with the election.
Even though we're taping before tonight's debate.
I don't know how people could bring themselves to watch. We have to do it because we're journalists, but I know people who said they weren't going to watch.
Well, I'll be watching sort of with my, hands over my eyes because I want his head to blow off, but I really just want her to be appealing. And in the context of the campaign, the Trans United Fund has endorsed Hillary. They're a new political PAC created this year, supporting issues around transgender people. And they have come out with a political endorsement of Hillary.
And it was nice to see what they wrote in Christianity Today, which is the #1 evangelical magazine in the country, that says enthusiasm for a candidate like Trump's gives our neighbors ample reason to doubt that we believe that Jesus is Lord. Well, that's what people who think about these things are saying.
Judy Shepard, the mother of Matthew Shepard, who was murdered almost 20 years ago in Wyoming.
1998.
Left to die on that fence after being badly beaten, has made a pro-Hillary campaign commercial for Priorities USA Action, which is the biggest Democratic super PAC. It's the one funded by George Soros, run by a lot of Democratic bigwigs.
Paul Magala.
Yeah, and it's an interesting minute, so we thought we would show you that.
I've seen what can happen as the result of hate. My son, Matt, was murdered in Laramie, Wyoming in 1998. He was befriended by 2 men in a bar who pretended to be gay. They offered him a ride home, and when he was in their car, they robbed him and beat him. They drove Matt out to the prairie and tied him to a split-rail fence, then beat him some more and left him for dead. In the aftermath of Matt's death, my family saw the best of America in the love and support we were shown.
Despicable.
So when I see the hate that Donald Trump has brought to his campaign for president, it terrifies me.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
He's a Mexican. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't.
Words have an influence. Violence causes pain. Hate can rip us apart. I know what can happen as the result of hate, and Donald Trump should never be our president.
Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And the Southern Poverty Law Center has issued a report called The Trump Effect, the impact of the presidential campaign on our nation's schools. And it's about all this, about the bullying that's going on. A teacher says, my students are terrified of Donald Trump. They think if he's elected, all black people will be sent back to Africa. I've had Muslim students called terrorists. A boy from Mexico who thinks he's going to get deported. They're scared that grown-ups are going to hurt them. This is a physical fear that a lot of people have because of what's been stirred up in this country. And I don't know how we're going to get back to normal.
I'm very concerned about what happens after the election, but
It's happening now.
I'm crossing all fingers and toes in hopes that this is bluster and that once there is a final decision, things will calm down. But I certainly think the long-term prospect is for more of this and for the Republicans 4 years down the line to nominate someone who has similar views and maybe a little smoother about expressing them.
Or an independent candidate who would take advantage of that kind of demagoguery. It was nice to see the students at Liberty University stand up to their president, Jerry Falwell Jr., and say, this Trump does not reflect our values. You're
Yes.
supporting him. You're embarrassing us.
Yes.
Also, the University of Virginia College Republicans withdrew their support for Trump, and the college Republicans at Hampden Sydney, an all-male school in Virginia, withdrew their support. Okay.
Okay. Well, we are still, the LGBTQ populations have not been highly talked about in the presidential campaign still, but we are being talked about in North Carolina in the midst of that. Particularly the race for governor between the incumbent Pat McCrory, who is, signed the HB2 bill and continues to defend it.
And he said if Caitlyn Jenner comes to this state, she's going to have to use the men's showers at the university.
Really? And Roy Cooper, the Attorney General, who is opposing him, and opposing him very much on the grounds of passing HB2.
Well, the Charlotte Observer is not endorsing Pat McCrory, and they're saying it's the first time.
They endorsed Roy Cooper.
Right. They say we've endorsed him for 25 years over his career, McCrory.
Yes.
And they said he's an example of the Peter Principle, people promoted based on their past performance, not on their abilities for the new role.
They also did an extensive report, the Charlotte Observer, and you can go online to their website and check this out. An extensive report on the situation for LGBT people in North Carolina, because McCrory has said one of his defenses of HB2 is we don't need it. LGBT people are fine. There are no problems in North Carolina.
You're protected by the Constitution.
Yeah. So the Charlotte Observer did an in-depth report and found anti-gay violence, discrimination, suicide. They laid it all out very explicitly and in-depth, and it's a very impressive report.
Yes. Also in North Carolina, the lawsuit challenging the law, we got far with the university system, and then we got to stay on that, right?
Well, the original challenge was on behalf of a couple of transgender students at the University of North Carolina. The ACLU is now broadening their suit against HB2 to include all transgender citizens of North Carolina.
And they want the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is scheduled to hear oral arguments in January, to speed it up because of the things that you spoke about, because of the stress that people are under and the discrimination that people are under. There is an immediate need to deal with this.
Well, we're going to have to deal with it at the federal level, too. 45 members of the House of Representatives, all Republicans, have written a letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services saying that the regulations that HHS put out about non-discrimination on the basis of gender identity and expression are wrong, and that puts the government above physicians' judgment. I find this, choice, given how they feel about women's reproductive freedom and the argument we've been making all these years about the need for women and their doctors to be able to make their own decisions. For them to sit there and write this letter and say, the government should have no role in doctors' decisions with their patients is insane.
It's all whose ox is gored.
Always.
You can
And
look up that expression.
hypocrisy is the law of the land.
Well-
Good news, however, from Johns Hopkins University, which was the first to perform gender confirmation surgeries in 1965 in this country, and a dozen years later...
That's true. Who was the woman who had to go to Sweden? Come on.
Christine Jorgensen.
Christine Jorgensen.
So Johns Hopkins was the...
Denmark, Sweden, whatever.
Scandinavia. That's how you get over that one.
Yes.
Johns Hopkins was the pioneer, but a dozen years later, they changed their minds, and they had some very anti-trans people on staff there who killed that surgery and said, oh, no, this is wrong. These people are crazy. We're going to stop doing this. 1979, they stopped doing it. And they've been notorious ever since for their opposition to this kind of surgery or helping trans people transition. Now they have changed their mind again, and they are going to start again doing transgender, gender confirmation surgery. This is a very big deal, and they have they still have a couple of professors on staff who hate this, and the university has explicitly disavowed their views.
Great. And we like that the Supreme Court changes its mind from time to time, like on anti-sodomy laws, which they once upheld and then overturned. But folks, if we don't win this election, they can turn it back again. That's what we're trying to remind you of.
And we hope that the justice system in Alabama stays firm in its suspension of Justice Roy Moore, although he is appealing his suspension for not being willing to go along with the United States Supreme Court on issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
They told him to clean out his desk.
And he said, I don't like those judges who made that decision. I have some objections to some of them.
There are probate judges in 8 counties. There are still 8 counties in Alabama where same-sex couples can't marry.
Well, nobody can.
Choctaw, et cetera.
Nobody can because what they are doing is adhering to the analysis that says if you are going to deny licenses to same-sex couples, you have to not give licenses to anybody. So in those 8 counties, nobody can get a marriage license still.
Okay.
My mother would have called that cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Okay. In Norfolk, Virginia, there was a trans panic thing going on. Police said a sexual encounter ended violently after a man found out the person he was with was a transgender woman. Jeremy Edmonds stabbed the victim 17 times. The victim survived. It was a small knife, I guess not very sharp. The 36-year-old to the abdomen, face, etc. But the perpetrator's been charged with malicious wounding and sexual battery.
Well, not so lucky in Ohio. In Cleveland, trans woman Brandy Bledsoe, 32 years old, was murdered, I think, in a driveway of her home.
Now, we told you in Louisiana, Governor John Bell Edwards wanted to protect us through executive orders, putting it into the contracts that you couldn't discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation. And his Attorney General, Jeff Landry, I think, said, I'm not doing that. Not approving
any state contracts with any companies that includes this non-discrimination provision.
And a judge is allowing the Attorney General to block these protections.
Now, it's a district court judge, and the state is appealing that decision. So I suspect that I certainly hope that we will get a different decision as we go up the line on this.
Well, what decision shall we make on Mike Yenny in Louisiana, a Republican politician representing Louisiana's largest parish? He's being investigated by the FBI for allegedly sexting a 17-year-old male at his old high school.
17 years old.
17 legal, but highly inappropriate, especially since you're an anti-gay family values type of guy.
With a wife and kids.
He's sorry.
I saw his.
He's sorry.
I saw his videotaped
He's
apology.
Sorry. You are sorry.
Very sorry.
Mike.
All right. Lambda Legal Defense has announced that it is in favor of decriminalizing consensual sex work.
Yep. They want to be clear. They're not for trafficking or anything like that, but they're supporting efforts. And I'm glad to see the legal groups coming out on issues like this finally, because I think there was a reticence before while we were working for marriage and all these nice things that they didn't want to stand up for people who were being persecuted for things like that. Yeah, exactly.
Well, activists in California are back again at the Beverly Hills Hotel because they want to stand up still against the Sultan of Brunei, who still owns the hotel and others, and wants to institute Sharia law in Brunei.
The boycott is not over, is what they are saying, because the hotel PR machine is saying that the boycott fizzled.
Yeah.
And don't forget, he was also trying to buy the Plaza Hotel, but we stopped that.
So Beverly Hills Hotel, no good.
The National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs has released its report, Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, and HIV-Affected Intimate Partner Violence in 2015. Take a look at this study. Of course, it's very disturbing, but it's important to know about. Go to avp.org, and you can read it yourself. Transgender women 3 times more likely to report sexual violence and financial violence from their partners. Survivors with disabilities 2 times more likely to be isolated. It goes on, and a lot of them are also denied emergency treatment in shelters and things. 44% denied access to emergency shelters. That's shocking, at this point.
Send it to Pat McCrory.
All right.
I want to thank a safety for the Green Bay Packers who, with the unlikely name of Ha Ha Clinton Dix.
Oh, yeah.
He is a native of Orlando, Florida. He's in the middle there at a game recently between the Packers and the Giants. That's a Giants player on the left. He wore an Orlando United T-shirt under his uniform to support the people of Orlando after the massacre at the Pulse nightclub there. And I want to give credit also to Giants safety Landon Collins on the left and Packers running back Eddie Lacy on the right. The NFL is extremely strict about uniforms. They dictate everything you wear head to toe. So he had to be thoughtful about how he was going to do this, and he put it under his uniform, but then revealed it when he had the opportunity to do so, standing there on the sidelines and with support from those 2 other guys. And, thank you. That was a great gesture.
Okay. Do you want to know how your city fares on the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index? They rate the cities based on their policies. It doesn't mean that we get 100 in New York, but we know it's not nirvana. But go to hrc.org/MEI. Okay.
Let's go to international news.
Yeah.
In Grenada, the island in the Caribbean, they are delaying their vote on a new constitution for a month because there are gender equality provisions in the proposed constitution. Men and women should be legal. And so word is getting around the island that this will legalize same-sex marriage. So they want to be sure that people know, no, this will not legalize same-sex marriage.
I remember Betty Friedan saying that at the ERA march back in around 1980.
So they're taking an extra month to educate the population and to point out that the LGBTQ citizens of Grenada are, in fact, not happy with the new constitution because it doesn't include things like same-sex marriage.
Backlash in France. Tens of thousands marched in Paris against same-sex marriage. They want to repeal the law that allows same-sex marriage. Just remember, they never give up.
Well, it's fascinating to me because, clearly they're just offended by the idea. It's not like this has had any impact on their lives, I'm sure.
Well, the Prime Minister of Australia, Turnbull, says, wait a minute, this isn't just for the gays to decide. You have same-sex marriage, it affects everybody. We're all going to have to accept it. And he's for it. He says this, and he's supposedly for it.
What do they think's going to happen? They're going to go to hell because they didn't go march in the streets against it?
You know what they raise. They say, I'm going to have to deal with them coming into my restaurant, and they're going to be married, or I'm going to have to bake them a cake, or whatever. This is the things that they say. I'm going to have to let them in a room in my hotel?
I wish they would listen to themselves.
Gays?
Yeah.
Well, Switzerland, they're a little bit more liberal. 7 out of 10 people say gay couples should be allowed to get married there rather than just have civil partnerships.
What are you doing on November 9th, and can you be in Springfield, Mass? The trial of Scott Lively, the right-wing American who's been spreading hatred towards gay people all over the world, is starting in Springfield on November 9th. I think it may actually just be some motions. But this is a case brought by SMUG, the Sexual Minorities of Uganda, against him in a U.S. court because the law says that if an American citizen goes to your country and starts making trouble, you can sue that person in U.S. court. So Frank Mugisha and SMUG, supported by the Center for Constitutional Rights, have brought a lawsuit against Scott Lively in Springfield, where he lives, and are pursuing this. It's taken a couple of years for this to actually start getting to trial. But the fireworks are about to begin in Springfield, Mass. on November 9th if you're in the area.
Will Secretary of State John Kerry be testifying?
I don't know.
That would be nice. I hope the State Department weighs in.
How about former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, she could go up there.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
That would be great.
It's after the election, after all.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, then she'll be president-elect.
In Indonesia, 2 men have been, I stepped on your line,
That's all right.
but I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to respond. In Indonesia, 2 men have been arrested for a picture they put on Facebook. There it is. They're canoodling.
For once, Facebook is not persecuting them. It's the country of Indonesia. They're 22-year-old university student, 24-year-old office worker. They were arrested in Manado.
Arrested?
They admitted it's them in the picture, and they posted the picture to prove their love, the local police spokesman said.
I would call that civil disobedience.
Those darned heterosexuals, Nigerian President Muhammad Buhari said at a press conference with Angela Merkel, I don't know which party my wife belongs to, but she belongs to my kitchen. She told the BBC she might not support her husband's re-election campaign.
I'm hoping for the same eventually from Melania Trump, but I'm no longer optimistic.
She's claimed her husband's lost control of the government. The president said his wife should butt out of politics, saying he has superior knowledge of government. But he also said he might abolish the office of First Lady, but he's backed off that proposal. Those darned heterosexuals.
You watch out, because she could run for president.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We've seen it happen in this country.
That was my point.
All right.
AIDS news.
Yes.
Well, there are several interesting stories in AIDS news. One of which is this new study that has come out that has people quite interested and potentially excited, although I'd say, people are waiting to see what happens. Emory University researchers in Atlanta did a study on monkeys with SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus, which is
something that makes Anne suspicious.
Well, because I have vivid memories of, 30 years ago when they were trying to come up with ways to attack the HIV virus in human beings. And because they could more easily experiment on monkeys than human beings, they did a lot of studies of drugs in monkeys to attack SIV, the cousin of HIV. And they could come up with some stuff in monkeys, but it didn't always work in humans. Sometimes it's a good model and gives you good clues, but not necessarily exactly the same. So they have come up with an interesting result of this study. They injected these monkeys with SIV, which you couldn't do in humans. And then 5 weeks later, they started giving them antiretroviral drugs, and sure enough, that started suppressing the virus. But then they added this other thing, a monoclonal antibody, and then they took the monkeys off the antiretroviral drugs. And the ones who had received the monoclonal antibody, the virus did not rebound entirely, but the ones that didn't receive the antibody the virus did rebound. So they're saying, whoa, here's a magic bullet that we've been using on Crohn's disease. Maybe if we do this with humans, we can suppress the virus without having to keep people on antiretrovirals.
And Dr. Anthony Fauci at the NIH said he found the results stunning, and they've commenced human trials.
And according to our associate producer, Bill Ballman, who's very involved with HIV research and knows about these things, we will have a very quick answer on this. Within a few weeks, we will have some indications of whether this is a good path to follow. Certainly, it's an interesting idea and something that should be pursued when you get these kinds of results, but it's not, don't stop taking your medications yet.
And keep taking PrEP if you're taking PrEP, but we have a report that there are a couple of more cases.
No, the second case has popped up of someone who claims to be PrEP adherent, was consistently taking pre-exposure prophylaxis, Truvada, basically.
This is what you take when you don't have the virus, but you're at high risk.
And you take it on a daily basis or almost daily, and it should prevent you from getting the virus. And it seems to be almost completely protective.
But it doesn't protect against all strains. So a minor strain can come up, as it did in this case, and the person got infected.
By a rare, highly drug-resistant strain. And the drugs that it's resistant to, this strain, are the drugs that are in Truvada.
Yet another reason for continuing to use condoms on top of PrEP, which most people actually who are on PrEP are not doing at this point. And of course, they're also getting other STIs and including some drug-resistant forms of gonorrhea and syphilis and things like this.
The sexually transmitted infection rate is really growing quite fast, and that's a scary thing. It's right back to the 70s.
Among gay men.
All right. Well, from that to entertainment news?
Sure.
Okay.
What? Well, I mentioned...
Start with your reviews.
Oh, shall I do the reviews? Well,
sure.
I saw... Oh, hello! That's what the show is like, folks.
It's probably not Jerry Lewis.
It's two young comedians. It's two young, well, it's almost. It's two young comedians playing two old guys on the Upper West Side. They don't even try to, it's very meta. They're not trying to fool you that they're really old men from the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
And, actually, a lot of the humor is very sophisticated, a lot of inside New York references, a lot of very obscure literary references and things like this, and yet very base as well. The problem is, I didn't think it was funny. I mean, a lot of people laughing around me. Apparently more younger people are into it than a fogey like myself.
I don't know. Usually the audience laughs more than we do at almost everything.
Well, we saw Heisenberg together.
Yeah.
Now, this is, I was really looking forward to this. First of all, it's by Simon Stevens, who wrote Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which I loved.
I love that,
too.
too.
But that, I think, was more about staging and all that kind of stuff. Well, this is Dennis Arndt, who's very good, and our old friend Mary Louise Parker. So it's just a two-character thing. That's it. Very little set, all that stuff. She's a younger woman who tries to engage this older stranger in her life. I couldn't have been more bored.
Well, I wasn't bored because I love Mary Louise Parker, so I was quite happy to have 80 minutes to sit in the theater and watch her close up. But I agree, the play is ridiculous, and even the characterizations are ridiculous. So if you adore Mary Louise Parker, that might be a reason.
And I wouldn't mind seeing more from Dennis Arndt, who I thought showed himself to be a pretty terrific actor with not very good material. But I loved, for that is the title of the play. Now we're going to show you 3 pictures from this. This is by Mike Bartlett, who did Cock, who did the King Charles III, a really great playwright. It follows a great ensemble led by Richard Armitage, Amy Ryan, and Zoe Kazan over the 60s, the 80s, and today, basically. Family. Now, this is the kind of play that I think I'm going to hate, because it's going to diss the 60s generation and look how selfish they've become and all that kind of stuff. But the characterizations are so funny and interesting and real that I really enjoyed sitting through this play. It's a terrific production. Off-Broadway.
I saw a play that I can't recommend because I saw the last performance of it, Marie and Rosetta, which is about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, gospel singer, and her protege, Marie. And at the very end, there's sort of an implication that they ended up in a relationship together, but it's very vague.
I'll have to ask Tony Halbert about that.
But the music was great, and I enjoyed it.
He knew Rosetta. By the way, go online and look up Rosetta Tharpe and watch her perform on YouTube. I mean, what a talent she was.
Oh, my God. And the woman who plays her has a voice to die for. It was just, that was fantastic.
How about that Shepard Smith? Now, I thought he was out a long time ago, the Fox News anchor, but apparently has now officially come out. And he said Roger Ailes, who was just fired for sexual harassment at the station, was not homophobic and was like a father to him. Talk about stepping on your applause line, Shep. I mean, you know, why are you defending this guy? Of course, Roger Ailes is now advising Donald Trump.
And you don't want to burn any bridges. Opening this weekend, King Cobra with James Franco and Christian Slater. This is the true life story of the porn producers in rural Pennsylvania fighting over a young star. There's a murder.
A young star? The young star, Brent Corrigan.
Yes.
But Brent's not in the film. He's played by a young Disney actor.
Yeah. I found the movie kind of cheesy, and now I watched it online as a screener.
Not
I
on
didn't
the
see
big screen.
Yeah, but I didn't find it not as great as Moonlight, which we're about to tell you about.
Most people watch King Cobra online.
I also want to make sure you remember that the New Fest LGBT Film Festival in New York is on this weekend. October 20th through 25th. A lot of fascinating things in that. Go to newfest.org.
I mentioned that there's a Doctor Who spinoff called Class with a gay character, and a viewer wrote and said, hey, that's going to air stateside starting the 29th of October on BBC America, if you get that in your cable package.
We mentioned last week, and by the time you see this, it may be too late, although some of you see this show early online. Thursday, October 20th, Rocky Horror Picture Show with Laverne Cox on Fox. Not one of my obsessions, but others like it. Have you been following Masters of Sex on Showtime?
No, I was never very fond of Masters and Johnson, so I didn't tune in, really.
Well, the show
I think I tried to watch it once.
I've watched the show, and I kind of enjoy it. And what I've been enjoying lately is the relationship between Anna Lee Ashford and Sarah Silverman as her lover. And Sarah Silverman got pregnant, and she didn't want to tell her parents that she was in a relationship with Anna Lee Ashford. She finally did, and they rejected her and said they weren't speaking to her again. And then Sarah Silverman dies in childbirth. And the grandparents steal the baby.
Oh.
So we're going to see whether that storyline continues. It was very heartbreaking and tragic.
Masters and Johnson were very anti-gay.
I know. I got them kicked off the CBS Morning News for that.
Yeah.
Because I insisted they have someone oppose them on that, and they wouldn't appear.
It was always, I mean, you know, of course there were famous sex researchers, and probably in the beginning there were some of the few people who even talked about homosexuality. But as time went on, they got invested in the whole idea that you can change this.
I know. Now, we'll tell you more about this probably next week, but we went to a screening of the movie Loving, which is starts coming out November 4th, rolls out progressively across the country.
4 thumbs up.
Yeah, it was really good. It's about the Loving versus Virginia case.
Mildred and Richard Loving, who were an interracial marriage in Virginia, they got arrested for it in the 50s and fought all the way to the Supreme Court. You know the story. And it got us our rights in terms of same-sex marriage eventually. They established marriage as a fundamental right.
But the movie opening this weekend that really is fundamentally important and which we highly, highly, highly recommend is Moonlight.
And we go to our interview now.
We are thrilled to have with us today Tarell Alvin McCraney, the writer of the original story on which the brilliant new movie Moonlight is based. Tarell is an award-winning playwright. recipient of a MacArthur grant, teacher at Miami University, and the guiding light behind Moonlight. And before we talk to him, because now he's embarrassed, we will show you the trailer of the movie. Again, we showed it to you a few weeks ago, just to refamiliarize yourselves with Moonlight.
What you looking at me like that for? What, man? Come on, you just drove down here? Yeah. Who is you, Sharon? For a long time, try not to remember. Try to forget all those times.
At some point, you gotta decide for yourself who you gonna be. Can't let nobody make that decision for you.
You gonna tell him why the other boys kick his ass all the time? What's wrong?
I'm good.
No, I done seen good, and you ain't it.
Remember the last time I saw you?
No, you gon' listen.
To who, Ma? Huh? To you? Who is you, man? I ain't seen you in like a decade. It's not what I expected. What did you expect?
So Hilton Als in The New Yorker opens his brilliant and laudatory review by saying, "Did I ever imagine during my anxious, closeted childhood that I'd live long enough to see a movie like Moonlight? Barry Jenkins, the director's brilliant, achingly alive new work about black queerness. Did any gay man who came of age as I did in the era of Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and AIDS think he'd survive to see a version of his life told on screen with such knowledge, unpredictability, and grace?" And he did, and that's what he says, and he's blown away, and so am I, by this movie.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Mr. Als as well.
Yeah. First I should ask you, how does the movie compare to the original story you wrote?
Compare is a hard word because the original script is very much alive in Moonlight. In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, which is the script that I originally wrote, has a lot of the same everything, the same
poetry
language. Poetry. I think one of the things that Barry talks about, so I don't feel bad repeating him, is that he tried to preserve a lot of the original sort of intent and voice behind it. And then added all of his natural and incredible talent. I mean, he really sort of took everything he's learned as a filmmaker over the last 15 years and sort of set a specific sight on this piece and brought it into life. And that it's been thrilling to watch. It's been thrilling to be a part of in that way.
It's thrilling for us to watch. What was your original motivation in writing this?
I wish it were something more, altruistic and art leaning, but it really just came from a kid trying to figure out his life as a gay black man in Miami.
In Liberty City, Miami, not the Miami that most people are used to seeing on film.
Right, which is one of the things that Barry and I talk about often. I mean, we grew up blocks away from each other and never knew each other, but we grew up blocks away from each other, lived basically in the same school district, went to the same schools. And one of the things that I think was compelling to us about bringing this film forward is that Liberty City is one of the few neighborhoods within the city limits of Miami, the actual city limits of Miami. So is Overtown, so is Attapata. So all the places that you're seeing in the film are actually the city of Miami. whereas what you're used to seeing is actually Miami Beach.
South Beach.
Exactly, which is not in the actual municipality of the city of Miami. And so one of the things that was important for us two homeboys was to bring home in all of its real beauty forward. And so, I mean, I had just graduated from DePaul University. I was about to go off to do this play, and I got accepted to the Yale School of Drama, and then my mother died in July of 2003 from AIDS-related complications. And I was trying to figure out what it meant to be alive and what it meant to be her son and the son of, you know, a drug addict, and what it meant to be writing and trying to create art, and what it meant to be from Liberty City. All these ideas of, I guess, what the precipice of manhood can bring to you. And I just tried to put them down as best I could in a very visual way. And I think one of the things that Barry talks about is when he read the script, it had so many stunning images that he knew. So it was perfect kismet when he finally got the script about almost 10 years later.
And you've written so many terrific plays.
Well, that's nice of you.
Well,
everybody doesn't think so, but that's, you know, that's very kind of you.
The brother-sister trilogy, which was here at the Public and was also in London. Choir Boy here, we saw Wig Out, Head of Passes, and you apparently you're often asked, you know, is this a gay play or is this a black play? And you say it's an American play.
For sure.
And talk about why that's important for you to. Say.
Because they're black gay people in America. And I think the more we try, I mean, I don't say that as a caveat or as an exclusion. I say that because I think the more inclusive we are about understanding who makes up our community, the easier it is for the art to reflect that. And so the moment we start to try to parallelize art into one, or try to canonize art into one sort of silo, we end up negating all of the ways in which intersectionality actually works in our community, in our America, the America we actually exist in, where all these things overlap and intertwine. And so this film, Moonlight, is a perfect example of that. I mean, people are like, well, there are no white people in it. And we're like, yeah, except you can still feel the oppression of the patriarchy all around them, in the abject poverty, in the attempts of hypermasculinity, in the drug wars that are raging on. I mean, the world isn't, this is an American movie. It's a movie about American life. And to try to take that away from the fact that it's also a black and gay movie, those things are antithetical to what we think of as our lives.
The movie is so unstereotypical and unconventional compared to what audiences, I think, have come to expect. And I was deeply impressed by that, but it was painful to watch the silence of the young boy and his inability or unwillingness to speak through a great deal, even at the end, through almost all of his life.
Because we see him at various stages of his life.
Yeah, we see him at 3 different stages of his life, played by 3 different actors who are just shocking in their continuity through that, even though they didn't meet until after the movie.
Let's say their names. Alex Hibbert is a first-time actor who plays Little when he is
born and raised in Miami.
Ashton Sanders in high school, and then Trevante Rhodes as an adult. And what a transition we see, and yet what a unity we see among these characters. It's so amazing.
For sure. I think we have to really tip our hats to the casting director. I mean, this film was not made with a large amount of time to cast and sort of a lot of rehearsal time. So these actors met each other on set. And I think that's really important to know. And the 3 actors playing the same character never met, as you said. But Yezi Ramirez, our casting director, is born and raised in Miami. She lives in LA, but she's born and raised in Miami, and she knew who we were looking for. She knew who Barry wanted in terms of the weight that this young man carries, and you're going back to the silence that he sort of lives in. I mean, he's trying to find operational use in this world that is telling him different things about himself, that is, he's meeting danger at every corner, and finding solace in these small places. And so his ability to speak, his willingness to speak is limited. And so a lot of that was going to have to come down to the eyes, which, as Barry
amazing.
says, yeah, Barry talks about it as being the windows to the soul, and how he read this book called In the Blink of an Eye in film school, and really focused on the eyes and how they worked. I mean, again, Barry's not, Barry won't say this, but he really did put himself forward in the way that I may have put myself forward in the content. He put himself forward in the form, and really made sure that the form matched the content as personally as possible. If that makes any sense.
And who's your cinematographer?
James Laxton.
Because the pictures were just like belong on the walls of museums.
Yeah, I actually keep trying to tell the producers, hint, hint, to send me posters and large posters of the film, because I can put it all over my house. They are gorgeous. They are. They're images. Stunning. Yeah, they're just stunning images all over. And part of it is because Barry Jenkins, the director, and James Laxton, the cinematographer, have worked together for so long, so they have a shared language. But also, what they didn't do was stop Miami from being Miami, which is to say, we have incredible lighting. We have incredible openness and vastness, and even though there are some very heavy and terrifying things that happen in this film, in the story, and in my life, a lot of those things did actually happen, there would still be an incredible, beautiful sunset, or a rain shower that was stunning, or it was the way of life. I remember going home sometimes and sort of sitting in the house. We didn't have any lights because my mom didn't pay the light bill, and so we would be sitting there, but you would see these beautiful reflections on the wall because of just how much light was pouring in the windows. And we were still living in quote-unquote abject poverty.
Now, while this is a story that mirrors your own in many ways, he does not end up as an award-winning playwright.
Yes, he does not. He does not.
Don't give it away.
Spoiler alert.
Don't give it away.
I'm not. That's
Right.
as far as I'm going to go with this,
Sure.
unless you want to go farther. But I thought that was an interesting choice. It was not, again, a conventional trajectory that you might have expected as he matures.
Well, again, I was using the template of my life to try to figure out what the next steps were, and if I use the story, and I'll say it this way: whose love was I most did I most yearn for? Whose attention did I most yearn for at those early stages of my life? And then we often emulate that as we grow up. As a child, you sort of think, whose attention was I always after, even in an subconscious way. So when you grow up, you begin to emulate that. You begin to become that person because you don't know if you actually got that love or you still want it. And so to me, it was about trying to put those pieces together to see what it looked like, not necessarily looking at my actual life, but taking the events of my young life and sort of figuring out how they could have gone if a corner was turned in a certain direction.
And again, without going into too much plot, I mean, there's certainly violence and bullying, but there's also unexpected love.
Exactly.
In places where you're not expecting it in the film, and you go, ooh, wow,
Yeah, and those again were, especially in the early parts, though, I did know a drug dealer who taught me how to ride a bike and learn how to swim, and who was very kind to me and generous to me and loving to me.
Beautiful character, and his girlfriend played by Janelle Monáe.
Yeah.
There was another unconventional cast.
Yeah, she's amazing. The whole cast is just. They are
stunning.
They're stunning. They're good people. That's the thing. You see them on screen, but what you're actually feeling from them is this vibe of like all in. Everybody was all in.
All right, I have a crass question.
Sure.
First of all, Hilton Knowles is amazed that this movie got made. We're all wondering about its prospects for success in the world, whether that's awards or money or whatever. Birth of a Nation has not opened successfully and was supposed to be the big black movie this year. I'm just, Oscars. So I wonder how you see this fitting in commercially or artistically in the world as it gets released this weekend.
Well, I wish I could say, to be honest. I mean, I wish I had enough boots on the ground to be like, I've done this a million times and it works like this. I mean, there are people, I'm sure, at the production companies who have a rubric and understand this much better than I do.
There's never been anything like this, so it's hard to predict that.
To me, the fact that, people are responding in this way is already a success. The fact that
you've gotten great reviews,
but also sitting and watching it with people, the engagement with it is so strong and so powerful. And for me, that's the success. That to me, if we get people to sit in the theater and really engage, we've done our jobs.
I think people will be engaged. Just as a middle-aged white woman, I was
appreciate
engaged.
That.
Yeah. And middle-aged is generous to myself. So let me take you to the work you are doing now at Miami University with this theater and civic engagement class you're teaching. How is that playing out? How does that manifest itself?
Well, at the University of Miami, they offered me the chance to connect back into the community in a way that I thought was really important, which is to give young artists a kind of running start at figuring out whether or not they wanted to be an artist, if they want to work in art, and if they do, how do we give them the time and space so that they can create art that reflects what's happening in our world and their world right now. The university believes, as I do, as does the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center where this takes place, that the students are going to come up with the answers to our big questions. I mean, you and I just talked about how working in various systems can bring us skepticism. If we work too long in it, we see things happen over and over again, we get a sort of skepticism. I believe that our young people are a little immune to that just now and may be able to imagine a world that we cannot. And if we give them the tools that we have, maybe they can come up with something that we weren't thinking about. Maybe they can come up with a way that it works that we weren't thinking about. And so that's really important. How do we tell our stories, the stories that we continue to tell, right? About revenge or about mourning, grief, but through their aperture. What can they illuminate about our world that we can't quite see?
I yearn for them to come up with better solutions than we have.
So do I.
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
I was telling Ann, I read a survey today that said a quarter of the millennials would rather a meteor hit the earth than either of the two candidates win the election.
Yes, well, and that may be glumly true.
But what about, I mean, look, we've all been at this a long time, and you're old enough to be president. Happy birthday the other day.
Thank you so much. Happy birthday to you.
What is your take on I mean, broadly about what the hell this country is living through right now?
Well, I think partially, I mean, being on the borderline of millennials, because that's where I just happen to be born. Borderline millennials is what someone told me. I think one of the things that I'm always curious about is the ways in which we ignore how a younger generation is telling stories, is getting their news, is interacting. We oftentimes are, I mean, even in the theater, right? We tell them to come in, turn off everything, sit down, shut the F up, watch what we're doing. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but that's not how they actually operate. I mean, when they're watching their favorite show, they're tweeting about it, they're Snapchatting about it, they're sending messages back and forth. That's a connectivity that maybe you or I don't understand. But there might be answers in that will bring more unity, the unity that we all crave, and yet we keep diminishing how they're using it. My students, God bless them, make up some of the most amazing, funny, enlightening 15-second stories on Snapchat, Vine, and Instagram than I could with the entire 2-hour play. And yet we don't call that art. We call that kids playing. And so we have to really figure out how we're investing in our young people and how we're chastising them back into the same formulas that we've been using over and over again, and then expecting different answers. We keep going, go do it the way we did it, and now give us different answers. And that's
I don't want them to do it the way we did it, but I'd like them to have a little more knowledge about what has gone before.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's always important.
But
right?
You've raised a question. What about that? Have you ever done one of your productions where you just tell everybody, hey, don't turn your cell phones off, let's just do this? Does it, have you?
No.
Or does it work?
No.
Could it work? Could it work?
Who knows? I don't know, because again, the space to try something like that doesn't really exist. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is make a lab so so the kind of storytelling that we're after, the kind of problem solving that we're after, is illuminated, so we can see it. Because again, it's hard for me to imagine. I was brought up in the Cherry Orchard Theater, right? I know to go in the theater. In fact, my phone is off. I don't put my phone on airplane mode. Whenever I'm in somewhere that my phone goes off, because that's how I was trained, right? So, but what does it mean to be connected and be connected? I mean, if you can process being connected to you two and everybody else at the same time, then maybe that's a part of the brain that needs exercising, and maybe there's something to that. But I definitely, yeah, but I also teach, I mean, listen, my students will tell you they suffered through 10 weeks of Antigone. So it wasn't as if they came in and were like, we're writing this new thing. I was like, oh no, we're reading Antigone, we're reading Shakespeare. You're gonna figure out what came before and figure out what you bring to it that's new.
But you've directed Antony and Cleopatra at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I mean, and in Shakespeare's day, didn't people talk back and talk and at the actors and everything?
And still in some theater cases they do. And yet in sort of the places where we're most lauded, we tell them to be quiet and don't talk and don't yell back and don't you know.
But you're right, it's not in every setting, and it's different in different places.
Absolutely.
All right, well, experiment on that and then come back and tell us about it.
I will.
But we've run out of time for this now, so we have to say good night for this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Tarell, couldn't be more impressed by Moonlight.
Thank you.
Really hope that all of you out there will go see Moonlight. It opens this week.
Or any revivals of his plays until he writes a new one.
All right.
And Tarell will be here as our writer in residence any minute now.
Exactly.
But thank you very much.
Thank you.
A pleasure to meet you and see your movie.
Happy birthday.
And we'll see all of you next week.
I've seen what can happen as the result of hate. My son, Matt, was murdered in Laramie, Wyoming in 1998. He was befriended by two men in a bar who pretended to be gay. They offered him a ride home, and when he was in their car, they robbed him and beat him. They drove Matt out to the prairie and tied him to a split-rail fence, then beat him some more and left him for dead. In the aftermath of Matt's death, my family saw the best of America in the love and support we were shown.
Despicable.
So when I see the hate that Donald Trump has brought to his campaign for president, it terrifies me.
I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
He's a Mexican. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't.
Words have an influence. Violence causes pain. Hate can rip us apart. I know what can happen as the result of hate, and Donald Trump should never be our president.
Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.